Well, I'm Rob Dawson, joined this week by our Liverpool correspondent, Beth Lindop. Thanks for stepping in this week, Beth. We're going to start in Manchester, obviously, after the Manchester derby, where Ruben Amorim held a heated press conference after the 3-0 defeat to Man City.
Guys, you have I understand that, and I accept. So it's not a record that you should have in Manchester United. There are a lot of things that you have no idea what happened during these months, but I accept that. But I'm not going to change. When I want to change my philosophy, I will change. If not, you have to change the man. So, and we will talk about that every game that we lose. I don't believe in that, in the system or whatever. I play my way, and I'm going to play my will until I want to change. My message is that I'm going to give everything. I will do everything, always thinking about what is best for the club. That was always the same message. And then it's not my decision, the rest. So until I'm here, I will do my best I really want to win games. So I'm suffering more than them. I'm trying to be rational, and I don't lie to myself. So I see the record, I understand the frustration of everybody, and I understand any decision that came with that. But that conversation about the two midfielders, the pair, Kobe and Mino, I understand all these narratives. But then when I look certain games, we play with two. It's the same thing.
Rob, you were obviously there yesterday, and you've been there most of the season, most of last season through Ruben Amorim's press conferences. I mean, he looked there like a frustrated man. Was that a sort of a typical sort of Amorim press conference, or was there a sense yesterday that the heat was really starting to mount?
Yeah, I mean, the clips that have been played there, you can obviously tell that he's very frustrated. I mean, I actually sat in the room, I actually thought he was a little bit more measured than probably I was expecting when he actually walked in. We've seen him do things like this in the past. He was really frustrated after the Arsenal game. I think he thought that United played quite well in that game, but all the questions afterwards were about the goalkeepers and the goalkeeper situation. He got very, very frustrated, probably more frustrated there than he was in that press conference after the City result. Obviously, you saw as well how emotional he was in his post-match stuff after the Grimsby defeat. Kind of came out after that and said, I do get emotional when these things happen, and I just need 10 minutes to kind of calm down, and then I'm fine. So I actually thought, as frustrated as he obviously is at that result, and you can kind of tell there in the press conference, I actually thought he was relatively measured. I think part of his frustration is that immediately now after any Man United defeat, the questions are about his system. I think all of those are valid because, it's not really worked out than perhaps in the way that he would expect. But his point to us in that press conference yesterday was, well, you're talking about the system now. You weren't talking about the system after the Arsenal defeat because I assume that you all thought it worked relatively well. And again, there were questions yesterday about Bruno Fernandes. Is he better suited as a number 6 or as a number 10? He played as a number 6 yesterday, but he also did that job against Arsenal, against Declan Rice, Zubimendi and Odegaard, and did okay. So Amorim's kind of pointing out that you can't have it both ways. You can't think that it's okay after the Arsenal game and blame a City defeat on the system. It's, these things are the same. There are different reasons for these defeats. And I think the overall thing with this is that he's just becoming more and more frustrated. And ultimately, he's becoming more and more frustrated because of his record. You can't, for all the kind of defence that you can mount of the system and the players, you can't get away from his record. I mean, 8 wins in 31 Premier League games is just not good enough. And I'm sure that, maybe you from the outside can tell that, things just aren't going the way that he would have expected when he first came in.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously been a lot of debate, hasn't there, about his approach in terms of his honesty and how sort of blunt and emotional he's maybe been at times. And he's had a lot of criticism for that. And I think, from the outside looking in, I don't mind that from a manager. I think it's quite nice. We talk a lot now about how sort of sanitized the game is. And I think, we all know that there's been big problems at Manchester United long before, Ruben Amorim came in. So, I think that there's nothing wrong with him, I guess, venting his frustrations, but it does seem sort of the past few weeks, certainly after that Grimsby game, it was almost like he maybe should have taken 5-10 minutes to just sort of calm down and get his thoughts together before coming in, because ultimately, he can't be coming in giving these super emotional reactions after every game. That won't inspire the players, that won't inspire the fans. But it does sort of feel like, I mean, obviously he was one of the managers that was in the frame when Jurgen Klopp left Liverpool. He was someone that Liverpool were interested in, and ultimately the reason that Liverpool didn't go for him in the end was because he was so wedded to his philosophy, as he calls it, or his formation. I mean, do you think the fact that he is being so obstinate and he's really sort of sticking to his guns, is that admirable, or is it a little bit naive?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think that it's gone past the point of no return with the system. I think if he was going to change his system, that he probably would have done it at points last season when, they really were struggling. I think he's got to the point now where he probably feels that if he was to change now, it would be quite a big sign of weakness, both with the fans and also the players, that he's been so defensive of the system, and he's explained why he's doing it, that to change now, the immediate question, if he was to change for the next game, would be, well, why have you not done this sooner? And I think he's trying to avoid that. He has got a point in that everyone knew that he played this system at Sporting Lisbon. It's no surprise that he's come here and played this system. The guys that hired him at Man United knew exactly what he was going to do and what he wanted to do, and they hired him regardless. I mean, I think the more pertinent question is, has he got the players to play with this system? I would suggest that he hasn't, even after the summer window. In my mind, I can understand why they spent a lot of money to revamp the attack, because they just didn't score enough goals last year. In my mind, I would have perhaps used a little bit of money that they used on one of those attackers to buy a midfielder, because I think having a midfielder who can cover a lot of ground, who is energetic and mobile, is far more important to that system than maybe having another number 10 or maybe the money that was spent on a goalkeeper. So he's just not going to change his system. So I can understand why the conversation is going to carry on, but he's just not going to change. And I think the problem he's got now, and again, going back to that first answer that I gave, is his record. And regardless of systems and personnel, it's 8 wins in 31 Premier League games. I went back and looked at some of the other permanent managers, their records in the last 31 games. Erik ten Hag had 12 wins in his last 31 games in charge. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had 14 wins in his last 31 games in charge. That tells you that Ruben Amorim now is on relatively thin ice. And I remember at the end of last season, there was someone who was very well connected to the kind of top bosses at United, who said that this was before the Europa League final, said that there was no danger that Ruben Amorim was going to get sacked after the Europa League final, even if they lost against Tottenham, which obviously they did. But what he said was, you need to look at the first 5 games of next season. Well, the 5th league game of this season is against Chelsea at Old Trafford next Saturday. At the moment, they've got 1 win from 4. It hasn't been particularly convincing. That tells you that the pressure really is on Ruben Amorim now. And I'm convinced that United don't want to make a change, particularly this early. The danger is, has there been enough sign of progress or improvement, ever since he came in last November? Has there been enough there to justify him carrying on? And at the moment, the difficulty he's got is that he's now living game by game. They've got Chelsea at home, then they've got Brentford away, then they've got Sunderland at home before the international break. He really is in dangerous territory now, because it's just, aside from the conversation about the system and players and who's he's picked and who's he signed and where the money gone, the biggest thing that you just cannot get away from, and he accepted it yesterday in his press conference, is his record. You just can't get away from that record of 8 wins in 31 Premier League games. And Beth, you cover another big club in Liverpool. I imagine that if Arne Slot had come in and replaced Jurgen Klopp and had that kind of record, you would probably think that he'd be quite lucky to be there still.
Yeah, I think certainly maybe what has helped Amorim is that Arne Slot inherited a stable club, I guess, and United aren't that and haven't been that for some time. So I think if Arne Slot had come in and that had been his kind of record, and particularly following on from a manager as successful as Jurgen Klopp, the fans maybe would have started to grow frustrated quite quickly. I think United fans, to give them credit, are quite understanding of the situation at the club. They know that the issues around the club aren't solely on the manager, it's about the players. Some of these players have been there through several managers' tenures and maybe have been guilty at times of not quite doing enough to sort of save the manager's job. I think, the one thing that last season it felt like was a mitigating factor from Amorim. I mean, you mentioned that does he have the right players? And he obviously inherited a squad that wasn't his last season. Now he's spent obviously this money. United have spent this money in the summer, and you said about them getting another midfielder. How much of that is down? How much of that recruitment is down to him and his decisions, or how much of that is sort of above his head in terms of, you know, the likes of Dan Ashworth, the people making those decisions sort of behind the scenes?
I mean that I do have a lot of sympathy with Amorim, because he's, again, in his pre-match press conference before the City game, he's asked a lot about Benjamin Sesko, and the question is framed as in, you know, you've spent a lot of money to bring this guy in. Well, you know, it's not necessarily his choice. United went through a lot of different options with the number 9. They looked at Liam Delap, they looked at Gyökeres a little bit. There was all these different kind of names, and to kind of pin Sesko on Amorim, and any of these signings really on Amorim, it isn't right really, because there is you mentioned there is a committee that kind of decide these signings. Amorim has a say, obviously, but there's also Omar Barada, there's Jason Wilcox, there's Christopher Vavell, who are all involved in this recruitment process. So to kind of pin the summer spend just on Amorim, it is wrong, and it's part of. I mean, I do want to kind of defend Amorim a little bit, because again, you can't pin all the kind of recruitment on him. I don't think you can pin all the blame for what's happening at Man United on him either. I mean, he's not the type of manager to kind of come into a news conference and throw his players under the bus. Not at all. I mean, he's actually said that on Friday at Carrington. He said that he's always going to tell us in the media that he loves his players, whether he thinks he loves them or not. You've got a situation against City where immediately, again, the questions are about Amorim, about the system. Well, if you look at those 3 goals, all 3 of those goals that City scored are completely avoidable. Now, Jeremy Doku was walked past Luke Shaw for the first goal. Luke Shaw is United's most experienced, longest-serving player. He should know better than that. The second goal comes from a throw-in, a standard throw-in on City's left. And instead of United forcing the ball back into City's defence and making them recycle it and start again, they kind of just cut through United with 2 or 3 passes, and all of a sudden Haaland's in and he scores. The third goal is an absolute abomination, really, defensively, and it could have been 4 or 5. So Amorim's probably sat there thinking, well, why am I getting all this stick? And the problem is that Amorim, as a manager of Man United, and also his system, because he comes in and plays a different system, is now a lightning rod for criticism, and people kind of tend to look past the other things that are contributing to this. All that said, I mean, and he said it before. He said it after Grimsby. He said that, you know, clubs can't change 22 players. If there's a change to be made, it is the manager, and that is true. You know, if there is one major change to be made at Man United because of results, it's going to be Ruben Amorim losing his job. It's not going to be the club saying, right, we're going to stick with Ruben and we're going to change 22 players. So as much as I can sit here and defend him, he is the man who's kind of taken that on. And the worry is that he's going to struggle to turn it around from this point. You know, when you go through a run of 8 wins in 31, you know, that is a million miles away from where United need to be. And do United, as much progress or, you know, positivity as there has been after kind of the Arsenal game and bits of the games at the start of the season, is there enough there to suggest that United are capable of winning 10 games, 5 games on the bounce? You know, probably not. And it's a difficult place for a manager at a top club. That's a difficult place for them to come back from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned Dan Ashworth there. I completely forgot he's not even at the club anymore, which I suppose.
Yeah, but he was part of it. He was part of it, you know, 2 summers ago. So it's, you know, it is part of, you know, the wider kind of recruitment issues at United. You know, that's been an issue for 10 years. Have United used their money and signed the right players? You know, invariably, the answer is no. There just haven't been that many successes over the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose on the flip side, a team that have been pretty successful when it comes to recruitment over the past sort of decade or so is Manchester City. Obviously hasn't been maybe quite the start to the season that they would have liked, but yesterday, particularly in that second half, thought they were really impressive. I caught a little bit of it while I was at Burnley, and you know, you mentioned that third goal, and Manchester United were really poor. But how much of that and how much of that result yesterday was down to City just being really good?
Yeah, I was impressed with City. I mean, I think part of the frustration for United is that City heading into the game looked quite vulnerable after those defeats. But they didn't really look like that during the game, particularly sort of in that middle period of the game, the end of the first half, start of the second half. They looked, I don't want to say the old City because that's just daft, but they looked more like the team that we're used to. Thought it's massive for City if they can get Phil Foden back. Obviously last season, lots of the problems that City had were put down to missing Rodri, but they also missed Phil Foden, not to a season-ending knee injury, but his form dipped. There were other things going on off the pitch. He looked exhausted for most of the season. He said when we were with them in America for the Club World Cup, he thought that the rest in June, that he didn't go with England in June, and he thought that the rest that he had there had done him the world of good. He actually said it was going to be new season, new me. And if City can get him back to his level from 23, 24, that season when he was the Premier League's best player by a mile and had I think he had 19 league goals and 27 in all competitions. If City can get him back, that is an absolutely massive boost to Pep Guardiola, because you're always going to have someone like Erling Haaland scoring. In his worst season, Erling Haaland is always going to score goals. We showed that again against United. If you can have Phil Foden coming back to that form that he showed 2 years ago, plus with Rodri coming back, maybe with a bit of a more stable defence, you get John Stones back next to Ruben Diaz. I actually thought that Donnarumma was terrific yesterday. Obviously he's not Edison in terms of what he can do with the ball at his feet, but he's capable. And what he does bring is this huge presence in goal that everyone will have seen the save that he made from Mbeumo on that volley. It's a terrific save. But there was a point in the first half where United had a run of corners and there was a little bit of pressure building, and United it's kind of sensed that United thought that maybe something was happening. Corner comes in the box and Donnarumma comes through a crowd of players and punches the ball an absolute mile. And it relieves the pressure. It makes all City fans relax, the City players relax. So I thought I was really impressed with him. And do I think that they're on the same level as maybe Liverpool and Arsenal? Perhaps not, but they are still quite a dangerous team in this title race, particularly if they're kind of going under the radar a little bit. And I thought they showed yesterday just how good they can be when everything starts to click.
Yeah, just on Donnarumma, because from the outside looking in, it was sort of, it seemed a little bit of a strange signing. Obviously, they sort of went for James Trafford in the end, obviously bringing him back to the club, and he didn't play particularly well. Was it Tottenham that he made that blunder against, and you felt a little bit sorry for him, because it almost feels like he's made that mistake, and now he's facing a very real fight to stay in the team. How do you see that one panning out going forward? Is Donnarumma now sort of the undisputed number one, or is there still a way back for Trafford to get that shirt back?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Pep picking Donnarumma yesterday was quite a big statement, because he could have quite easily just said, well, Donnarumma's not up to speed yet, we're going to stick with James Trafford. He played the other Premier League games, but to throw him straight in suggests that he is going to be number one. I mean, Pep in his press conference on Friday did sort of say, we've got a lot of games, the players don't believe that I'm going to chop and change and make changes to the team, but I will. And that suggests that James Trafford will get games. It perhaps won't be the number of games that he thought. I do feel quite sorry for James Trafford, because obviously he turned down that move to Newcastle. He's come to City. I think when he arrived, he was probably looking at it and thinking, well, Edison's got 1 year left on his contract. He said that he's staying for this season, so maybe I'm number two, or we share the responsibility of this season, and then Edison leaves on a free next summer and I'm then number one. Well, now Edison's gone and he's got a 26-year-old Donnarumma in front of him who's just signed a 5-year contract with the option of another year. So James Trafford probably looks at that situation and think, well, this isn't really what I signed up for. And he's got, motivation really to play as many games as possible, because he wants to be in the World Cup squad in the US next summer. So I do feel a little bit sorry for James Trafford. I think what Pep Guardiola will say, if he's being completely honest, is that the needs and the desires of players is secondary to what the club and what City need. And he kind of hinted on Friday that they did think Edison was going to stay. Edison then has gone to Fenerbahce, and what he called it a market opportunity with Donnarumma. You don't get these opportunities to sign world class players that often. And while it might be disappointing to James Trafford, for Pep Guardiola, City is the most important thing, and they had a chance to sign a world class player in his position, and they went ahead and did it because he wants the team to be successful. So, I mean, Pep will never say this, but in his head, he's probably thinking, well, if James Trafford's a little bit annoyed, that's up to you. It's not really my problem. My job is to help City win.